you in the process of creating something huge and you want to understand how others have done it? Or have you already found success and still feel something is missing? Then this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Alchemist Lounge, a podcast where Alex Atwood chats with top performers to discover habits, routines, and alchemy that you can put to work in your own life.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the show, Jeff Scult. And Jeff is fascinating. I met him on my way to Burning Man. I didn't have the wardrobe necessary for my fifth burn. And so I was introduced to Jeff and came to his very unique studio. And I'm just so excited to talk to you today, Jeff. So let's get started.
I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, okay. In the pre-interview, you mentioned that you experienced some alchemy through your dog at the age of 4. So I got to start off. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So the great business lessons we can learn if we harken back to the lessons we learned in our childhood can sometimes be the most potent thing. So my dog, Sam, had worms. And my dad says, listen, Sam's sick. He has worms, and we're going to make him better. Come over to his dog bowl. We need to give him a pill. How do you give a dog a pill? How do we give Sam a pill? And I'm like, oh my God, my dad, who was just was my hero, is asking me my advice. And so I'm so excited. And I came up with the answer, of course, which is we hide it in his food. And I just said, no. Dogs are smart and they're also a little cynical. Like, I didn't know what cynical meant at that time, but he just said they'll feel it, they'll sniff it out, and they'll spit it out. If you need to give a dog a pill, you wrap it in something sweet, and then they will swallow it all day long. Mm-hmm. Now, I forgot that lesson for most of my life. And I came back into coherence with the power of that. Because when we started One Golden Thread, we were talking very much about the problem. We were talking about the catastrophe, the ecological disaster, and that we need to do things that are more about the addressing the problem. But I realized if you just talk about the sweetness and wrap it in something sweet, and that's what we're doing. We as a humanity are all taking a big pill. And instead of being problemists or activists, we can be proactivists and solutionists and just focusing on making a better product that allows us to be compromise free, and that everything else is like a natural waterfall where all the other things just sort of cascade, because we're doing things first and foremost, how does it make us feel? And then it cascades out to doing right by the world. Because if we focus just on doing right by the world, and I'll just share this with you, which was the precursor of One Golden Thread, which is this icon of the 108 is the emblematic of the way that I used to live my life and the way that I'm living it now. And that I used to seek infinite change in the world by identifying myself with big causes. And I would come home and I would feel inside this sense of a loneliness. Or I would seek unity of community. And I would still come home when I didn't have it, and that sugar high would be gone. And I would feel something inside that felt like a loneliness. But I came to realize that if we start with ourselves first and we fill up our own cup, everything moves. And then it's two hearts coming together. And then we become truly a butterfly. So this notion about going back to that lesson as a child, which is, if we have a pill that we need to swallow, let's wrap it in something sweet. Let's make something that is heightening the vibration instead of lowering the vibration of focusing on what's wrong. We can have a scarcity mindset or we can have an abundant mindset in any situation. And seeing things through that lens of being solutionist versus problemist, seeing it through the lens of being proactivist as opposed to activist, and just making that better product that wraps whatever it is in something sweet, because then it's something which we will eat all day long.
So in this particular instance, it's fashion, right? It's sensible, good-looking clothes for men. That is that sweetness, that wrapped in sweetness. And there's something deeper in there that's applied. So let me ask you, so you learned this at 4. So where did you first apply this newfound knowledge?
At 54.
at 54. So it took you 50 years to actually apply what you had learned. And so how did it come back to you?
What I'm working on now, because, look, I was a serial entrepreneur. I did a lot of things, and I always focus on the positive side and presenting it in a way that would make you feel vibrationally connected as it relates to my soul's journey and not just being an activator for somebody else's visions or dreams or businesses or what have you, or being a people pleaser or what have you. I was always doing that, but I'm talking about doing it from a place of cleanliness and integrity, of focusing on something that was truly a soul's calling. I started my soul's calling by opening myself up at 42, but then it was actually 51, 9 years later, that I actually stepped into claiming my own golden voice and seeing myself through a lens of artistry, the way that I would see others as well. And the share within that is with one golden thread, very much started with fashion, which is like, because it didn't start out as a clothing company.
We're going to get there, but I'm super curious about your journey prior to One Golden Thread. And it was fascinating to me just seeing how you've set up your studio, how there's just so much texture in your studio. But what was really fascinating to me is that this One Golden Thread was something that you didn't come up as somebody who, learned fashion in the most traditional sense. You came from a totally different journey. So I want to hear about that journey. And I'd like to start with, after you, obviously, you fed the dog, you learned, like, there was a seed planted when the dog took the sweetness. But tell me about, where did you grow up and where was the alchemy showing up in your younger years? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, thank you. I grew up in Arizona, in Phoenix, which is, I've come to really embrace the irony and the alchemy around, we all have a Phoenix rising journey. So it's got a nice metaphor, but, deserts have always sort of touched my soul. So whether it was Arizona, whether it was Israel, before I could, I think, even walk, I was, moving around on a kibbutz, with my hands in Morocco and, Burning Man. I mean, so deserts have always touched me. But, the alchemy for me started, and again, like I pushed much of this away. My father is a naturalist. I mean, he loves nature. He has a philosophy of nature, which is, nature's not that thing to fear. It's that thing to revere. Mm-hmm. Even like being in nature with the bears and the tree and the snakes, it's just like, no, it's part of. So he was a great teacher in terms of this idea that nature is this thing that we can embrace. And then my mother was a naturalist artist, and her art was all about nature and us as one. As a matter of fact, after I was deep in my One Golden Thread journey, I found a photograph of that painting. That painting disappeared. My father doesn't know where it is. But so this was always in my DNA, this notion. And, my mother was also the punniest person I know. My father is the most precise person with his words. So you amalgam those two things, and like, I care about the etymology of words, because I believe that words cast spells and we can choose our spellings wisely. And that's why, the written word was actually the thing that claimed my golden voice in terms of doing spoken word poetry. So, but all this was suppressed. This was all just sort of like corded in the back of my DNA, but I was just more concerned with surviving, because my upbringing and I want to be very clear. Like I was privileged to be, we middle class. We had a nice home. It was all fine, but there was a lot of, turmoil in the home and in the neighborhood and in the house that get broken into and the alarms going. It's just as a young boy, there was, I realized that my survival technique was to people please and to be empathetic, very empathetic. But what I came to realize by looking back at my childhood is that I was empathetic to everyone's journey but my own. And think about that. There's always this outer projection of joy and what have you, but inside there was inner thoughts and turmoil that that frankly metastasized as an adult in ways that was making me have a dis-ease and a sickness inside. My first professor who taught advertising copywriting in college. And after a lifelong of seeing myself as being scared to even write, because I never was diagnosed as dyslexic, but I always transposed and always would mess up numbers and what have you. But this came naturally to me, and there was a semester-long project that was presented at the beginning of the semester, and you could choose a brand, and I chose Jeep to rebrand it and do a whole campaign. It's a semester-long project. You could take as long as you want. I turned it in after 5 days.
Wow.
Which was, because it was complete.
Yeah.
And it was just like this 5-day rushing river of like doing research and seeing that they're talking about chassis and this and that. And I'm like, no, Jeep is about an experience. It's about like, where is it taking you? It's about where you can go. It's about the feeling inside. It's about being with your dog. It's about all the things. It's your vehicle. It's to propel you forward. And what came through was this campaign idea that just I storyboarded it out and wrote the campaign. I turned it out after 5 days, and he asked me to stay after class. And he said to me, he said, yeah, this is the first time I've even introducing myself to you. You just were sitting in the back of the class. Wasn't sure who you were, what have you, but who helped you with this? I said, nobody. And he said, you've got it. He says, I've seen thousands of students. This is one of the best campaigns I've seen, which they actually presented to Jeep. I don't know what they ever did with it, but the campaign was the visual of the campaign as the arc of it was a man in his Jeep on a ridge on a mountain overlooking the most beautiful sunset. And the Jeep has mud all over it. And he's sitting on the hood with his dog next to him on the hood of the Jeep, looking at this vast serene. And the campaign was "What a Way to Get Away." And it just, wow. And he just said, you've got it. And so he recommended me for all the ad agencies. I had offers from Leo Burnett, what have you. I turned them all down because I decided to be an ad guy, but I decided to be an account guy because I wasn't feeling worthy to actually be like in the spotlight. I wanted to I was still in that motion of that ocean of visualizing that I was here to amplify and shine the spotlight on everyone else. And I was successful at it but I was hiding behind a veneer of what was unexpressed. And and I'm sure your listeners will appreciate that feeling that maybe they've had in their bodies where it's like, am I fully expressed? Have I fully amplified my gifts? And so what it led onto was this metastasized in my body, which we'll talk about whenever you're ready to go there, because it really was the twisted gift that catalyzed me forward.
Well, what's interesting is that when we started off, it was about self-care, right? I mean, one of the things that was a lesson to you, which sounds like a pragmatic marketing lesson that you learned from your dog. But what we started the conversation was with self-care, nourishing yourself, taking care of yourself, and then allowing that empathy to kind of flow through. And what I'm hearing is that a strong suit, a marketer was born. You had the river flowing through you when you were putting that project together, and suddenly something clicked, right? And now that was, you were validated, right? That was reinforced through that project. But you decided not to work for a big agency at the time. You decided to...
I did work for a big agency.
Oh, you did?
I just happened to be an account guy. They were doing all the creative briefs to amplify. And what I would do, because I couldn't help it, was I would actually put in the creative briefs language that would ultimately they'd be like, oh, those 3 words are cool. But I always knew they'd be the headline. But I just weave them in. And so I just gifted all the credit and set the table. So I became the table setter. But I was a little bit like Cyrano de Bergerac in the ad space.
Was there something that was blocking your self-expression at the time?
Absolutely.
That you later identified? You did?
Oh, absolutely. I was completely still living the lie that if I was somehow I had told myself this ridiculous lie that if I was being expressed, I was being selfish, narcissistic, or egoic. And it took a crucible moment that ultimately was the final pivot switch that lit me into one golden thread in 33 words by a stranger, which I'll share in a bit. It completely obliterated that lie. It fractionalized it. It fractionalized it as being like the biggest lie we ever will tell ourselves.
And it was blocking your self-expression.
It was blocking myself.
It was blocking you.
Do I have permission to speak French on this show?
Absolutely. You can, yeah.
So I self-cock blocked myself.
We do that a lot. We're our own cock blockers.
Let's be unlock
yeah.
the cock blockers. How about that?
I love it. So there you are, not self-expressed, working at a big agency as an account manager. And so at that time, where did the self-expression start to show up? I mean, where did you start to see the evolution that would eventually lead you to where you are now?
The evolution was that after a startup that was a very passion-driven startup with my best friend from college. This was my first thing after jumping out of the fishbowl from advertising. Is we developed a network of interactive kiosks pre-internet. For your listeners who also have gray hairs, as a way for marketers to tap an insular college audience. We don't need to go into the story, but it was this magical, very powerful thing that we did, and we just didn't see this thing coming, which was called broadband.
Yeah.
So we shut that down, and I needed to recharge my battery, so I decided to go travel for 3 weeks. It turned out to be 7 months, and I went around the world, and I decided that I was going to, because what I was told by somebody was that if you write to people when you're from back home, that when you get back, they'll be connected to your journey. So I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And there was this new thing called internet cafes, and there was this new thing called Hotmail. So I got my email address, J Scult, Jeff. I think it was like Jeff S at Hotmail. Like it was cool because you could. It was super early. I was like,
it's when all the names were available.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I started writing for the first time expressively, and sharing about the journeys and the people I'm meeting and the lessons and the blessings and the things along the way. And I had a list of, I think, 13 friends and family that I was writing to. Maybe it was 20. And I start getting emails back from when I open my inbox, and there's people, exactly like, who's this guy? And like, hey, listen, somebody forwarded me your email. It's interesting. Would you put me on your list? Well, fast forward to the end of the 7 months, and I had 300 people that I was writing to, and telling these stories. And so when I came back, there was this welcome home party, and there was like 100 people there, and 40 of them were people I didn't know. People that are just like, you were touched by your journey. You should keep writing. Of course, I pushed that away. Because, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm not a writer, that's not. So I just kept feeding and being with it. But I'm getting these taps on the shoulders. And as I'm getting these taps on the shoulders and pushing it away and being unexpressed, I started realizing that I was like, I just thought it was just like my pattern. I was getting sick. I would have flu-like symptoms twice a year. I had pneumonia, walking pneumonia, 3 times in 7 years in my 40s. And it would always start in my throat with these massive sized golf balls. And then it would drop into my lungs, Kermit the Frog, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just toast. You can't, and I had scarred lungs, and it was just like, wow, what's going on here? So this is 2012, and I was 2 years into going to Burning Man. And so I was kind of awakening to the possibilities of like, well, maybe I need some help and some support here. Because what's going on here? And so I decided Western medicine wasn't going to do the trick. So somebody had recommended go to a Chinese medicine doctor, which I did. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Chinese medicine doctor, but when they take your pulse, they kind of like are kind of dancing around a little bit. I'm like, this guy can't even take my pulse. I mean, what's going on with this thing called Eastern medicine? Because I was really early on my journey. It's just very cynical and a little bit of a dick. and I'm just like, I just gotta, like, I'm just like, what's the prognosis? I think I even said, what's the prognosis, doc? Kind of like, is it the red pill or the blue pill? And he leans forward and he takes his glasses off and he says, can I give it to you straight? Yeah. And that was one of the first times in my life my heart dropped, because I knew I was about to be confronted. And I knew this was the first time that something had softened inside me, that I was going to allow myself to confront myself.
You knew that right away when he said it. Yeah.
I knew something was coming that was significant.
Yeah.
And he said, listen, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you may look healthy on the outside, but you're not long for this planet.
Wow.
You're a shallow breather. You have a weak heartbeat. Your lungs are scarred. Your kidneys are on fire. It's just like your vitals are off. There's some sort of dis-ease inside that isn't necessarily something that there's something going on with your relationships.
Yeah.
And of course, my first thought was, well, what's my relationships out there? And then he said, with yourself first, anchored in. So I was surrendered and said, okay, so what do we do? What do I do? And so he said, well, I'm going to prescribe you some bark chip tea. Which is like, what? So
did he go? Did he? That you said bark chip tea.
Yeah.
So is that what it sounds like?
Bark chip tea.
Got it. Okay. So
it's this special concoction that he had.
Yeah.
That would make a complete mess of every teapot that you'd make, and I'm literally like 3 weeks into doing this bark chip tea, which he also said, look, examine your other relationships, because I can only go so far, and we can do acupuncture, but there's some other things that you might want to take a look at. Yeah. But I did bark chip tea for 3 weeks, and then I'm like, I'd rather be. I'm too lazy. So that's not going to happen. But I'd had on my coffee table for 6 months. I'd made the commitment to get the brochure for Esalen. That's all I'd done. I hadn't even opened it yet. And my partner at the time, she and I had been talking about going to Esalen, and I realized, okay, this I'm feeling this calling. And so she's sitting over there with her brochure. I'm sitting over here with my brochure, and I'm thumbing through the pages. And I'm telling you, Alex, if I'm thumbing through the pages now, I'd probably be reading it differently. But every one of them seemed to be like, awaken your inner unicorn dharma. Just like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like, and I'm like, and I'm not, but the alarm bells are still going off in my head. Like, you got to pay attention to this. So thank you for the sound effects, LA.
Yeah.
So I'm flipping through the pages, and I'm stopped even reading. I'm going back there now. I'm getting like this body, because this is really powerful. The reaction that I've stopped even reading the headlines, and I'm flipping the pages, and I'm reading the first 2 sentences. I'm figuring that they're going to at least say something that I'm going to be able to probably understand within the description. So I'm just reading description. No. And then I turn this page and think about, for anybody who's listening, think about that moment in your lives when you've had that feeling, which just hits you in the chest. And then think about that feeling that it's like a waterfall of chills, like of embodied chills that would follow suit on top of that. And think about those moments that would actually touch you so deeply, because it's speaking right to you, that it would bring you actually to tears. And that's what happened in this moment. And what happened was, I turned this page and I read the first sentence, and it said, do you ever feel that other people's opinions hold sway over your own? I've lived my life.
Boom.
Do you ever feel that you're living somebody else's truth to such an extent that you don't even know what your truth is? Boom. If you do, this workshop is for you. And then I went up and I read the headline of what it said only then. And it said, claiming your voice. Everything for me, in terms of my dis-ease, had started by a shutdown throat chakra. All the walking pneumonia, all those flu-like symptoms. And, this workshop almost didn't happen. Because when I said to my partner at the time, I said, oh my God, this is the workshop that I want to do. This is for me. And we were going through our own tumult, and I wanted to have some time to process, for myself, and be in this workshop for myself alone, which I hadn't done anything for myself. And she looked at it, she says, that looks like a good workshop. I think I want to do that one as well. And I, of course, did not claim my voice and say, actually, no, this is for me. And please find a workshop that speaks to you. This is a workshop for me to go through alone. We can go down together, but this is my calling. And so we called, and they said, well, we have good news. We have one spot available. And
Talk about alchemy.
And she said, well, I want it.
Oh, wow.
And I said, okay.
Oh.
And I signed up for some workshop that didn't speak to me at all. And I had this pit in my stomach and this tightness in my throat the entire time going down to Esalen. And we get there, and the first night, for those that have been to Esalen, is very much of a, you're in there's an orientation that's after the meal. So everybody's together in the hall, and I'm sitting at the table with the workshop that I'm supposed to be in. It was like expressive dance therapy or something that was lovely, I'm sure, but it just wasn't. I didn't need to dance. I needed to fucking dance my throat, and to claim my voice. And so I found the woman who was running this workshop. I said, who is she? And I found her, and she's sitting at the table, and I had a brief moment with her. And I said, I need to just share with you. This workshop is for me, and there's not a space available. Is there any way? And she said, she looked at me and she just felt it. Yeah, it was really, I could almost get emotional at that moment. That moment where she's just like, yes, this is for you. And so I did the workshop, and it's the most beautiful expression. And it's actually led to so many things in terms of unleashing me into the jet stream of life, unleashing my throat chakra. It also has served as really the precursor for one golden thread, because it's like we all have a golden voice to share. Gold inside us, the thread that unites us. And that's what this golden thread on the wrist represents. And the clothes are simply a somatic reminder, of it. And that's why I don't even think of this myself as in fashion. I think of this as more about just a passion for living. And it's the food that we eat, it's the thoughts that we think, and it's the threads that we wear. And these are not look at me clothes, they're see right to me clothes. But, I'll just share that this notion of claiming one's golden voice allows us to do all kinds of things. And the first lesson out of that came with the first lesson as I was leaving Esalen. And I needed to have the most challenging conversation in claiming my voice, was I knew that I was in a misaligned relationship, and I needed to have the most challenging conversation and let her know that. And I came to realize that I'll just quickly share this, and then I'll pause and we can go where you'd like to take it. But this was the first golden drop of that wisdom that just came, that now accords inside me, that's just leading to the book that I'm writing and the podcast and all the things that's coming, which is beyond, which is this, the blessing. As I slid into the Esalen tubs that morning thinking how I was going to have the conversation. So I'd claim my voice. Well, so now what? So how do you do it? Right? I understand the concept. I understand letting go. And as I slid into the tubs, I didn't even realize there was somebody else there. And I hear a voice behind me saying, hello, good morning. And he said, tell me about your journey. How are you leaving Esalen today? I said, well, I need to have a very challenging conversation. And he says to me, and by the way, this guy's this silver bearded, tall, 70-year-old Jedi, naked in the tub, kind of a vibe. And he said, well, let me tell you, we can see anything to anybody as long as it occupies 4 principles. This was the first lesson.
Mm-hmm.
It's important. It's your truth. It's timely. And it's shared with loving kindness.
Mm-hmm.
It took me 1.5 years to get the other part of that lesson, which is when you speak your truth because it's important and it's timely and shared with loving kindness. The second part, which I realize really is the unlock, is be surrendered to their response
mm-hmm.
and detached from the outcome. Because then all you're doing is you're just sharing a truth and you invite somebody in to that discourse. That was one of the first very powerful lessons of how do we claim our golden voice.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of really what my real life's mission is. And
wow.
In the close, you're wearing, what does it feel like to be this held and be this held and be comfortable in our skin? Be comfortable on our skin that reminds us to be comfortable in our skin. I said that before. That's pretty cool.
That is cool. So for those who don't know, tell my audience a little bit about Esalen.
So Esalen is a place of healing and revealing. It's a very spirited center with workshops, and it's nestled on the cliffs of Big Sur, where the grounds are extraordinary. There's a full garden there. There's people that certainly grow up there, but people come in for either 3 days or a week and take a workshop and have access to extraordinary opportunities to connect with themselves, connect with other like-hearted individuals who are on a healing or revealing a moment in their life. And then also connecting with nature, because there's a river and there's the ocean and the cliffs. And then the other thing that Esalen is truly known for is these mineral baths that are nestled, perched, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. So it's an extraordinary place that has gone through a lot, frankly. So I'll be very candid because I have so much love for the place, is that they closed during the pandemic and then they reopened, and there's a lot of new people, and they were getting themselves back in their footing. For instance, one of the things that was such a blessing of Esalen back in the day was that the food was literally like from farm to table with so much love, and I fully anticipate that they'll be getting all those things dialed back in, because for me to endorse a place, like I want to see that level. The magic of Esalen is of course still there, and the workshops and the teachers and the facilitators are truly alchemies in glass.
So there you, and how old were you when you had this, when you went to Esalen and had this experience?
First time was at 42.
So you were 42. So you went into Esalen, right? With a lack of self-expression, with a lack of clarity. And suddenly that showed up during the retreat. And now here you are. I'm assuming at the time you're still a marketer, right? That was what your core competency or whatever you want to call it was, right?
At that point, I was a co-founder of a white label fashion house for bands and brands. We were doing like premium tour merch for Pearl Jam, and then we were doing branded gear for all of Richard Branson's, entities and beyond. So that's what I was doing at the time.
Right. So living in that marketing lifestyle, creating brands, understanding sort of how to tap into consciousness to a certain degree, but you yourself didn't have that ability to self-express. And that was literally causing you disease. I mean, that lack of ease within you was showing up as sickness a few times a year, as not being able to speak when you clearly wanted something, you weren't able to express that want. And so now here you are at Esalen with your partner, with this deep understanding, and this wise person comes to you and gives you these 4 sort of pillars to work through, right? So what did it look like now for you leaving Esalen, or how did that conversation happen? What was the shift that took place as you were leaving?
Well, it took a year and a half more. It's a process because, we can give ourselves that self permission to shift and pivot into purpose. You really have to unlock it and give yourself the fullness of it. And you need to actually, and the muscle memory. And I was conceptually bought in. You need to put it into practice. And so I was in the training wheels of putting it into practice. And the truth of the matter is that it's not a time-based practice decision-making metric. I truly believe that we can shift and pivot like that. I just wasn't fully ready. Now, I genuinely strive to not waste time with time, because time is our most precious resource. And that's not a cliche. That's something which I came deeply into coherence with by realizing that time, is ephemeral, by, having a very personal, deep dive relationship with my mother's 7-year Alzheimer journey, which ultimately transitioned, 2 days before the pandemic got real in 2020. So this notion around like, well, what are we waiting for? And let's give if we have that one breath, our next breath could be that breath that we give ourselves that permission. And I needed to still give myself permission. It's great conceptually, but actually give yourself permission.
Yeah. What did it look like a year and a half later when your self-expression started to become more fully realized?
It was flow state. It was starting to touch flow state, because I finally decided to speak my truth and to move out of that relationship that was no longer serving, and it set events that a week later I was following my dream of moving to New York, because I thought that would never happen, because I was in a relationship where I was raising her son with her, and we were going to therefore be in San Francisco. It set in motion. It took some time, but again, it set in motion the fact that I was in a misaligned business partnership, and it's time to clean house. And it set in motion that I was starting to write, and that I did plant medicine for the first time, and it set in motion that on that buffer day of plant medicine, I actually looked down at a piece of paper, and I'm staring at a blank piece of paper, and instead of sweaty palms, like, what am I going to write or what's going to come out? What came out was just a free flow of the most extraordinary reframes and releases and reveals and remembrances of all the things that I told myself that I had cast aside or understood as a lie in disguise, to embrace, like a recapitulative relationship with fear, a recapitulative relationship with ego, an understanding of pain, that it actually is our most treasured gain, an understanding of fear, that fear is not the enemy, it's our resistance to fear that's the enemy, our understanding that when we come from love and kindness and soul, it's actually our inner ego that will shine like as a hero. I mean, it's all these things that came out on a paper, and if it's feeling to you like it actually has a little rhyme in time, it's because it did. I was writing that way for the first time, because it was somatically, like it was like the codes were from the universe, or from being in the company of you or somebody else on your podcast that I'd meet in happenstance. And I was a great listener, and I was like the memento guy, where the notes were all over the place, but they were here, and it was an opportunity to congeal. And when what came out became a Life 2.0 manifesto in that moment. And that's really where things started to flow, because it became my life. I read it to myself every morning, and eventually, I didn't even need to read it myself, because it was here, and it was already in my body. And so it was all the reminders of the things that I so easily forget, because we're all imperfectly, perfectly beautiful humans. And so that was my great, gift to myself. And I didn't share it with anybody, because I was still seeing myself as, well, who am I to share? And it's too weird. It's too raw. It's too personal. Like, it's some ayahuasca, like, lessons, deep shit.
Yeah.
Like, each one of them is like its own portal of understanding. And I came to realize from 2 crucible moments that it wasn't ever even a story about me. It was a story about we. And because there are no answers in it. It's really just like gateways for your own discovery. And so what happened that made me realize that was that a friend of mine was going through a very challenging time in the fall of 2015. And I was going through this chrysalis, like, am I going to leave my business and what am I going to do? And because I'm misaligned and I'm living into that stack of thoughts, words, and actions with integrity. And she said something that was so deeply touching to me and empathetic because it's something that I went through. And I said, listen, I wrote this thing and there's a few words in it that speak exactly what you're saying. And I don't know if it's going to, and I started apologizing. Like, I'm apologizing before I share it. And she's just like, I'd like to hear it. And so at that point, I closed my eyes and I shared it with her. I opened my eyes and she's looking at me with kind of this neutral face. And I literally, like, the level of which every unself-worthy bone in my body from my childhood to, was like my life flashing before me because I revealed my soul to this person. And I think I fucked her up or made it worse or whatever. And I literally was about to take this deep breath and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have shared that. And as I took the deep breath, she said, thank you. She said,
wow.
She said, I don't know what just happened, but I feel again right now. I'm just feeling something.
She said that.
She said that. And she said, I'm going to go away because I need to, like, process through, but I just feel like, I don't know what it is. Light, hopeful. I just feel. And so she called me a few days later and said, I've had the most extraordinary 3 days. I just feel, and things are coming to me and people are coming to me and I'm seeing some things in myself. And I said, I don't know what it was, but it started after we sat. And she said, that thing, you read me. Is it a place I can read it? I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to share it with somebody. So I shared it with her and she said, you should share this. And I immediately changed the subject. So fast forward 2 months and back to the 33 words I told you about at the beginning of this podcast. I was at the coolest gathering in New York City, a who's who list at Milk Gallery to celebrate the rock and roll anthology of the best rock and roll photographer of our time by the name of Danny Clinch, who I was honored to call a friend. Mm-hmm. And most everybody there was either a musician or a producer. I mean, just everybody was just incredible. And then I'm just privileged to be one of the ones that was doing whatever I was doing. And so everybody's like seeing each other as a peer and everybody's talking to each other. There's no clickiness. It's just like this family of people that loves Danny and Danny loves everybody. And we're coming together around art and, what have you. And it's a vibe. Mm-hmm. And his man turns to me, he says, asked me a question. I said, well, what kind of beautiful magic are you putting into the world? That was what I said exactly. What kind of beautiful magic are you putting in the world? And he says, well, I've come from a dark place, but I'm actually igniting. That's my dad's side.
He was from the UK?
That was actually South Africa.
Oh, okay. It was good.
Clearly not good enough. I said, well, that's really interesting. Did you just say the word ignite? He says, yeah, igniting. And I said, well, it's interesting because I wrote this story to myself, and it's a story. It's a 3-part story around intention and ignition and integration. And he says, well, I'd like to hear it. And I said, well, again, it's like, oh my God, I've got that feeling again. Like, oh my God, no, this. Look, I've only shared this one other person. This is not the place to do it. It's not a party trick. It's not a part. It's completely inappropriate. It's super dark. It's super deep. It's really, and the word I use at the time, it's really raw, authentic. Yeah. It's like super raw and it's authentic.
I'm writing that down. I love that.
Raw authenticity is what we're all about, right?
Yeah.
By the way, remind me to tell you about the 30-day raw authenticity challenge. It's a good thing to challenge ourselves all with. But so he takes his glasses off. He says, what's up with the glasses going off? And he says, no, I want to hear it now.
Wow.
And I literally took a deep breath and closed my eyes. And for 4 minutes and 44 seconds, I shared with him the Human Manifesto, and I opened my eyes and I literally was like about to just say like, "Thank you, it's nice to meet you." I gotta go because I was sweating and I just felt like I just felt awful because I knew it was inappropriate. I knew he was just going to basically be like, "Well, I wasn't expecting that. I didn't, you should have warned me or whatever." And I was just like, I got to exit stage left immediately. And he looks at me and he says, what are you doing with this? I said, nothing. He says, no, I'm saying, what are you going to do with this? And I said, nothing. And I'm just Jeff. Who am I to share? He looks at me and in 33 words, changed my life.
In 33 words back at you.
This is what he said. Exactly 33. And you can write this down and you can count them. We're on this planet for 3 reasons: to learn, to love, and to share. And if you are not sharing your gifts, you are being selfish. Quit being so fucking selfish. He poked me in the chest with 3 fingers. Who does that? 3 fingers. And he turned and walked away. And I'm standing there like in the sea of this party and this humanity, feeling this insane chills from the head, from the bottoms of my feet that landed. It's a funny story. It landed in my nipples, which is funny. It's now like my truth antenna. But anyway, but what I realized in all like, the power of that is I realized that lie that we talked about earlier, that if you're sharing your gifts, I had thought that meant you were being narcissistic, egoic, or selfish because you're hogging the mic. But instead, what you're doing is you're inspiring another to step into the spotlight and share theirs in circle. And that's what led me. I knew that the piece was about expressing the gold that resides inside. And I knew it was about there was a golden thread. So I went out and I got a spool of golden threads, multiple spools. I'm like, I'm going to leave my business partnership that I'm misaligned with. And I'm going to take a 3-month sabbatical. And I'm going to travel around the world and do this spoken word poetry, because I'd already been invited to do it in Berlin and Paris, and these communities just kind of opened up to me. And I'm going to invite people into this conversation around that the gold already resides inside you. And that's what I did. 3 weeks, 3 months became a year. And I traveled around the world. I tied thousands and thousands of golden threads on people's wrists. There's a video on our website that shows the anthology, that story that's just so beautiful and extraordinary. And what I realized along the way was that something so simple became a connective thread where people would see the thread and all of a sudden they didn't even know each other. And they would come up and say hi to each other. They'd say, Jeff. Well, it started with, Jeff. But what it transcended was, I know what that stands for. And so along the journey, I realized that, I'm not independently wealthy and I'm not, done. And I wanted to create something. I wanted to work on this as a love project. And I'd set it up as a public benefit company. And I wrote, the first thing I scrawled is I wanted to create a 7-sense sensuous living company. 7-sense sensuous living company. The 5 that we know, the 6 which is intuition, the 7th which is self-love that ignites a shared love. Okay. There's a lot of it, but I wanted to create for me the world's perfect tea. And I'd never designed anything before in my life, but I never had any, self-doubt about it because I wasn't designing for anything else. Like I'd been paying attention my whole life. Remember, my mother was a artist and the finer things and the details and what have you. And I'm not a fan of the fashion industry, to be really blunt. And I went to a fashion show last night that just reminded me, like, it's not my, but I'm a fan of like embodiment. And the one thing we have in common when we're not naked is we wear clothes. So these are not clothes that are like, look at me clothes. These are see right to me. Everybody looks like themselves when they wear these clothes because they're, and it started with the fabric.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different story, because if you feel something that's unique, it's not just about the way the clothes drape and what have you. Like I wear these clothes. I'm not wearing this for the podcast. I didn't dress up for the podcast. I rolled out of bed this way. I went to the fashion show last night this way. I mean, I live in these clothes, and that's the way people share with us that they have the relationship to the threads, which is a very interesting thing, which is owning fewer things that you love more. Yeah. Investing in things that are for life instead of for seasons, and to wear things that you love that just remind you that, again, to be comfortable in your skin and to have comfort on your skin. Mm-hmm. And to do it in such a way that we can obliterate the philosophy, which is complete, which I love to talk about if you want to go there, about how sustainability is not the answer.
Yeah, actually, there's two things I want to dig into, but just to reflect on what you just told me, it occurs to me that one golden thread is a manifestation of yourself, yourself fully self-expressed. So you've been moving in this direction, and now here you are, fully self-expressed, and a physical manifestation of that.
Now see, I need to write that down. So wait, I'm going to take an honor. Say that again, because you nailed it, and I've never heard somebody nail it quite so beautifully.
I'll try and do that again. So what I said was one golden thread is a physical manifestation of your full self-expression over your life's journey. And so that's very powerful. And it gives new meaning to these threads that I'm wearing right now. And there was definitely something special when I walked into your studio. And it's not just the way it was organized and how comfortable it was and how it smelled nice, but there was an expression of love that was in that studio, and it was just everywhere. It was in the ether. But there's something you said though that hit. You said shift and pivot, and I heard that on another interview that you did where it's not about change, it's about shift and pivot. So what's the difference between change and shift and pivot?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're very good, because you're this is so important, and it's so important for us all to embrace, because when we think about change, I mean, just anybody who's listening to this, close your eyes for a minute and just say, if somebody said to you, you need to change, or if you even said to yourself, I need to change, what comes up for you? Because
something's wrong
for me.
Yeah, it's something's wrong. I'm doing something not correct.
I am doing something wrong. Something's not correct. I am coming from a scarcity mindset. So within there's a natural human condition that I will go into a blame, which means that I will shame myself, because nobody can shame us. We can shame ourselves. So within that blame and that shame, we can actually calcify ourselves with pain. Because I need to change. Jeff, you need to change. Child, you need to change. So what if we shifted and we pivoted the philosophy? No, it's already inside us. We don't need to change. We can simply reveal.
Mm.
So, one of the spoken word pieces that came together, which is, we can see that we're beyond good. We're golden. And could it be just possibly that simple? That's it. We are worthy. We're enough. We don't need to be fixed. That we can choose to let go of those stories, to just shed that shit. That there's no need to change. Because to truly heal, we can choose to well and just reveal.
Mm.
Because we see it's a choice to release, dis-ease, to ease, to renew from within a welcomed inner peace. And within that reveal, we can embrace what is real.
Mm.
Any wellness feels to feel all the feels. And to simply stay open to being open is how we trust the trust. And that's when synchronicity fires within we and with us. And the most dope expression, I believe, is from the bridge builder himself back in the day, JFK, who said, rising tides lift all ships. And residing inside, if we listen, is that self-permission to pivot, because we can see that residing in even our darkest water is casting us most adrift. So simply stay committed to our inner gold. We become both the rising tide and the ship that lifts.
Hmm.
Feel that, because within there is that feeling of reveal versus that feeling of I need to change. Change is blame and shame and we can calcify into pain, but this reveal is so beautiful. And look, I get it. I mean, change is the only constant. I'm just giving it's a very beautiful thing to say. It's already inside us. Like, we are, just stay with this. This is not woo-woo or guru. This is fact. We are born golden. We are all born golden inside, and then life tells us differently. So it's already there. Mm-hmm. And I believe that singer inside you, or that poet, or that chef, or that the alchemist in terms of what you're looking to put in the world, it's inside you. Let's be expressed. And by being expressed, we can be revealed. There's no change in that. And therefore there's nothing but fame.
Yeah. It's a discovery of something that's already there. It's an uncovering of something that's been there all the time, that's been hidden by all of this, all these social structures, all of these things that we're sort of born into that stifles us. Wow, that's really strong. And another thing that really stuck with me just now, Jeff, is when you say intention, ignite. What was it? What was the third I?
Integration.
Wow.
Because that's the muscle memory, right?
That's the muscle memory. That's when
it's the, it's like we can live the Maya Angelou quote, right? You can just live it. Like the words are no longer important. It doesn't even matter what they say or what you have to say to yourself. It's how you feel. And it's that feeling.
Yeah.
We all know about the 4 quadrants of life, right?
Yeah.
Which is life is happening to you, life is happening for you, life is happening through you, life is happening as you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it as a totem, and it's okay. We can fall back into that, when we have those victim moments where it's like, why is this happening to me? And they can come. We can have the self-awareness to realize that we can shift, into, no, there's a lesson, there's a blessing in there, and at least go into quadrant 2, which is a beautiful, it's a beautiful stasis to see that everything can be a lesson or a blessing. But then there's that quadrant 3, which is starting to get so beautiful. That's flow state, right? That's the flow state when life is happening through us. It's just flowing and it's happening, but then life is happening as us. That's when we're touching the void. That's when we're just, there's nothing that we need to do. The words on this podcast are irrelevant because the energy was already felt before we shared.
Yeah. And seeing your journey, and when you discovered this along your journey, this is something that's fairly recent, and it's just made such a massive impact. And so for those that are listening that are, in their 40s or 50s, or they're in a career that they feel it's just been catalyzed. No, that's not actually the case. I have a last question. By the way, this is a fascinating interview. We have to do this again because we haven't even really got into into one golden thread. But there's a term that's thrown around quite a bit in fashion. Actually, it's thrown around everywhere, but quite a bit in fashion. And that term is sustainability. You hear it all of the time to a point where it's really been worn out. And your philosophy is regeneration. And so I want to understand a little bit about regeneration and how you feel that's more relevant than sustainability.
Well, look at the global sustainability goals, with the UN as an example. So if you just look at the aspect ratio around, if we were just to, sustainability is just maintainability. Let's just be candid.
Right.
If we maintain where we're at, we're still on a precipice that's rolling in the wrong direction. Right. So maintainability is not a goal. And I would submit that if you were sending your child to college and you said, go get him sport, get a C average, just maintain. That's not exactly the most inspiring thing anyway.
Yeah,
but,
it's true.
There's something dangerous in here. Words cast spells, and there's certain things that can lead towards a malaise. And there's certain things that can lead to ambiguity that you can hide behind. And that others that maybe aren't going as deeply as somebody else is just sort of doing that stamp of sustainability. Look, sustainability is not measurable, it's not modelable, and it's impossible to define with any clarity and understanding. If you took 100 people in a room and asked 100 people to define it, they'd look up to the right, which means and then they would define it in such a way that was kind of ambiguous. And what is sustainability is like using paper straws. Great. Okay, that's not going to get us out of this mess. So because it's not measurable and modelable, and because it's ambiguous, you have companies. I mean, H&M could say, well, we're doing sustainability because we're doing one thing in our supply chain that's touching that. And so we're using sustainable packaging. So we're going to use that word. And so you're going to feel good as a customer. You're going to say like, oh, they said it's sustainable and what have you. So because it's ambiguous, it's dangerous.
It's useful to them.
I've heard this word of greenwashing. Sustainability, I would suggest, leads to more greenwashing in the history of history than any other word, period. Now, regeneration means, sure, means good from earth materials, ethical materials in the supply chain. But what does regeneration mean? It's the ethical supply chain. It means using natural materials. It means that have biodegradable properties. It means, most importantly, that we're going to give back more than it takes to create. So what does that mean? So what if we looked at business not as this extractive, polluting, profits at all cost model, but what we did is we saw business within the construct of really the B Corp philosophy, which is that business can be a collective force for social good. I'm going to say that again. Business can be a collective force for social good. That is not just being an extractive and checking the box of doing less harm. It's actually saying, how can business be the proactivist to actually run their business profitably and also create solutions that actually create a better world for our children's children? So what I believe in regeneration as a model is following on the suit. This is not new. I mean, regenerative agriculture showed us the way. Thank You, Kiss the Ground. That's carrying that forward in a way that's easy to synthesize and understand. Kiss the Ground, the movie. Please watch that. Humanity. Regenerative food systems. Fashion just was the last frontier. And I got to tell you, this is an industry that needed to be unfucked.
Oh, yeah.
Fast fashion needs to be unfucked because that little red number, this and that cute, it gets a hall pass like if it was a bunny rabbit was really the most viperous thing on the planet because it's so cute. We don't even understand what it's doing. But let me give you some statistics. There's 80 billion new pieces of clothes made every year. 87% will wind up in an incinerator or landfill within 18 months. Why? Because we're taught that our clothes are disposable. Most clothes only get 7 wears before they're disposed or they sit gathering dust in your closet. Only 3% of that 87% are made of sustainable fibers. So it's just this massive leaching into the soil. It's toxifying the soil. But then what happens? It's like, why is trash, it's just trash. You throw it away and it's underground. You don't see it. All I see is beauty outside. What's happening under the ground is it's turning the soil into this toxic mess. And it's leaching into our waterways. 38%, this is the last statistic, 38% of the microplastics in the ocean come from the clothes that we not only toss, but also wash because it's leaching microplastics into our washing machines. It's into the waterways. So again, why does that matter? 38% of the microplastics in the ocean come from the clothes, synthetic clothes. It's getting into the fish.
Yeah.
It's getting into our waterways. Studies show, look it up, that we're ingesting an average of a credit card of plastic a week. So it's not just that we're closing off with clothes our largest organ, which is our skin, from breathing, but we're also, from the clothes and from other things that are plasticizing the planet, we're also ingesting. So we're making ourselves sick, we're making the planet sick. So fashion is this last frontier. And I believe we can unfuck fast fashion. Again, going full circle back to the lesson of the blessing of Sam, is that what we're doing is we're not talking about the problem. We're simply wrapping the pill, which is what we all need to swallow, in something sweet. And that's called one golden thread.
Wow. Way to bring it right back to the beginning. Jeff. What you're doing is inspiring on so many different levels. And you've articulated some of the levels that you're working on right now. So thank you for shedding so much light on not only on fast fashion, but also on your journey, on the need for self-expression, on how lack of ease, which could be a result of not allowing your golden voice to shine through, actually leads to physical disease. It's actually a thing. And so thank you for that. I have a final question. It's more about your website. And I saw that you had a playlist on your website, which was really cool for a fashion brand. So what's the inspiration behind putting a playlist on, section on your on your website?
Music moves me.
Yeah.
Music, it's not just the music. It's sometimes I will get such an unlock from the lyrics, from the songwriters. And even if it's not intended to move me in that way, words will will move me. But the music is what moves us. Music is what adds color to life. And I'll share, this is all supposed to be fun, this whole journey.
That's it.
If we've got time, I'd love to leave you with a spoken word piece, because it speaks to why the music, it speaks to why this, why all the things that bring us joy and awaken the artist within. But I will share one other thing, that's very
please do
important, which is, you mentioned, yes, it can create a dis-ease by being unexpressed. But what happens when we have an ease of being expressed? What happens? And look, everyone has their own journey. I will just tell you mine. I was sick habitually twice a year, every year in my 40s. I had pneumonia 3 times in 7 years, up until this time that I claimed my voice. Since I walked out 10 years ago, this past June, which was on my birthday 10 years ago, I have not been physically sick in my body once. And I'm not suggesting that, I didn't get COVID. None of this is necessarily a correlate. I'm just sharing my truth and just the facts of it, is that, in those moments when we feel ourselves getting sick, ask ourselves, maybe, is there something for us to release? Is there something for us that's sitting heavy? Is there something for us that's meant to be expressed? And I'll just share with you that is the greatest expression. But I'll leave you with this spoken word piece. But I'll first also just share that for any of obviously your listeners are tapped into their alchemy, because this is the Alchemist Lounge to tap into their alchemy. And so I would, be honored to create a special code, for the Alchemist Lounge, and for anybody that wants to pick up the threads. And this will be something that we'll also be able to track on the back end. So we'll be able to know how many trees were planted by the Alchemist Lounge. So how about we'll call it Alchemist 11? Alchemist 11.
Yeah, we'll do that. So there'll be a code Alchemist 11 if you want to purchase. And that's also going to be on if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the description area. So you can click on that to get there. And let's close this out with some spoken word, Jeff.
All right. So Alex, and every one of your viewers, and I'd love for every one of your viewers to answer this for yourself. Do you classify yourself as an artist? Raise your hand inside. Everybody's an artist. There's an artist within every one of us. And at some point along your journey, you started, or you're about to begin, to give 0 fucks about others' opinions of you, which will clear the decks for your infinite fucks, which is your transcendent truth. We are all our own healers, as mirrors to witness each other being our own revealers. No woo-woo, no guru. You are spirit full over spiritual, because the gold already resides inside you. You say yes to life with no hesitation and reservations, to free dive into the unknown, beyond your comfort zone expectations. It's your choice, and you choose to claim your golden voice. It's time to share your gift with increased ignition. When in doubt, get out, while embracing the beauty and the magic and the mystery of life's journey. More liberated and free together than apart. Each moment is your choice point, and you choose to live from an open heart. And you keep your eyes on all the blessings, because you've remembered, like Joseph Campbell said, residing inside that deep, dark cave shines your deepest soul lessons. And most importantly, you've remembered. This is all supposed to be fun. So, yes, fuck yes. Let's have some.
I love it. And we all have infinite fucks to give.
We do. I'll just leave you. This is an art collaboration that we made.
Oh, I love it. And for those of you who didn't see that, it says, yes, fuck yes. And it's a amazing scarf. Brother, you are so inspiring. You inspired me specifically by just a little excerpt of your journey that we talked about when I visited the studio. And what you've given us here today is just such a gift. And I know the listeners are going to be feeling this gift and they're going to want to listen to this over and over again. Thank you so much, Jeff, for everything that you do. For those of you that want to learn more about Jeff, want to learn more about One Golden Thread, there's a link in the description. And Jeff, how can they find out more about you, or how can they find out more about this phenomenal brand?
They can find out about me and the journey of my artistry and what I'm looking to put out in the world, which is going to be more of what you've heard here. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Jeff Scult, JEFFSCULT, or jeffscult.com. And then One Golden Thread is onegoldenthread.com. And then, of course, One Golden Thread on Instagram. And it's an honor to really, truly an honor to be with you. I love what you're doing. You are giving people so much permission to exist and shift and pivot and be in that highest. So truly, it was an honor. I've been looking forward to coming on, and if invited back, I'd be honored. And maybe we would start the next one, and maybe we would unpack the Humanifesto, because that would be a really cool thing. I'd love to hear reflections from you, because each one of them is its own little portal.
Yeah, well, let's plan to definitely do that, Jeff. Let's do that. We can't just do this in one session. We need multiple sessions to unpack all of this. Thank you so much, brother. It was a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I'm looking forward to ordering that Henley from you soon. By the way, guys, probably the world's greatest Henley, and this isn't just a marketing thing. It really is. If you feel these clothes and you feel the material that they're made with, these are phenomenal clothes. They fit you so well. They breathe well. It is just something else. So thanks again, Jeff. We will talk soon, and we'll have you back on the show. Looking forward to you being in the Henley. Like somebody said, these are like Jedi codes, Jedi clothes with codes to be in the boardroom, because you can dress them up, but you still know that you're a Jedi inside. Much love, Alex. Have a beautiful. Much love, brother.
Thanks for listening in to the Alchemist Lounge. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review on Apple iTunes. To catch all the latest from Alex Atwood, you can check out his website at alexatwood.co. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time at the Alchemist Lounge.